I'm thinking if I was a consumer and I was receiving a pitch along the lines of what you just described, it wouldn't be a completely frictionless experience for me. I'd have some objections, I'd have some queries and concerns.
So then it comes down to how well you execute, because whenever you introduce friction in how you position that, if you ever make it complicated, then what starts to happen is your take rate goes down.
Yeah, people just think can't be fucked.
Yeah. So it's about being good at deciding what your promise is and then being good at delivering that promise.
Yeah.
If you do something like that, though, you've changed the relationship with that customer overnight. Because now, the next time you renew, if somebody comes in with a fibre thing, I'm kind of a bit more, hang on a minute, it's not just a simple quid pro quo, comparison. Now I'm getting something like that's greater than 1 + 1.
Hello and welcome back to the Telecoms.com podcast. I just got back from my holiday yesterday, which is why you haven't had one for a little while and why I've got a bit of a tan. Although I made the mistake of inviting a returning special guest, long overdue special guest, Geoff Hollingworth from Rakuten Symphony. Welcome, Geoff.
Thank you very much.
And you've got, because you live in the States, you've got a better tan than me, like all year round. So
on camera, you can tell
he's ruining my tan.
He's got a long-term tan.
Yeah, thanks for ruining my little moment.
No, it looks good, Scott.
Well, I wasn't making a big point of it. Thank you. It's very kind of you to say so.
Yeah.
So I know fuck all of what's been happening while away, but thankfully you've both been
Ericsson's got
busy.
a new boss.
Ericsson's got a new boss.
That was the main news.
Yeah, and we'll come to that.
Star Wars banned things.
Yeah, and we'll come to that too. I've caught up enough to already have my self-indulgent bit at the end, which will be that. Shout out to Geoff's glamorous assistant, James, who's in the background. Hi, James.
Hello.
James is a recent father, by the way. So
right.
Congratulations, yeah.
Congratulations.
Father again, I should say.
Father again.
So, yeah.
So how old's the newest arrival?
About 5 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
I thought you were looking a bit knackered. He said 5 weeks, by the way, if you didn't pick it up on the mic.
Had a hard life.
Yeah. Yeah, God, that's in the distant rearview mirror. My youngest is 19 and a half, so it's been a while since I had to deal with that baby business. So I travelled with said family over to Canaries. Give a special shout out to my mum, who won't listen to this, but she's going through chemotherapy right now, so it was great to be able to be there with her, and she's dealing with it very well. So well done, Mum. And saw my family, my brother Sean, my sister-in-law Bea, and my nephews Sebi, Rue and Ty. So that's all I've been up to, just hanging out in La Gomera, as I said I was going to be. What about you, Ian? Been up to much?
It's been working.
Just working.
Well, I went to Sweden, but it was for work.
Right.
So, well, we can talk about that.
Yeah. So you went to Sweden to hang out with Ericsson.
I went to Sweden for the first time in 26 years.
Wow.
And they went.
Has it changed much?
Not really, actually. I mean, the Old Town area, which is the bit of Stockholm that you kind of want to see, is the same. I don't think you can really interfere with it anyway. So there's obviously more people with phones. I mean, that's the main difference, isn't it, over the last 30 years, is people with phones.
Yeah.
And sort of different hairstyles. But
what was it? What was the Swedish hairstyle? Was it more of a sort of...
I don't know, actually. I can't remember what the hairstyle was 26 years ago.
26 years ago.
But they were like, I'll make sure you don't leave it another 26 years before you come back. And I was like, well, yeah, I might not be around in another 26 years anyway.
Oh, yeah,
but
there's a cheery thought.
So.
Cool, yes. Well, we'll definitely hear more about that, because obviously you chatted to Ericsson and there's been some news. You went and hung out with Per Narvinger just talking about radios and stuff.
Yeah.
And they kept it quiet, and it turns out he's a boss now, or going to be soon.
They did a good job of not sort of revealing he was going to be announced as CEO, which, I mean, that decision was obviously taken, and I'm guessing the corporate affairs head, Peter, would have known about it. So,
but they kept their cards close to their chest.
Good job, Peter.
I don't think I'd want to play poker with Swedes. They're quite inscrutable.
Yeah.
So they were, okay.
But they were very good hosts, I should say. I mean, I went out for a meal on Monday in the Old Town at this quite famous restaurant.
Cool.
With,
have some nice
Ralph,
pickled herring.
Peter and Ronnie and Jenny was like the four kind of main people on the corporate affairs side over there.
Jenny, she's one of the senior execs, right?
You're thinking of Jenny Lindqvist.
Oh, it wasn't
different
her.
Jenny.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But an equally valid Jenny.
She used to be a reporter on the sort of equivalent of the FT in Sweden.
Oh, okay. Now she's PR
now she's
side.
PR, yeah. A transition that many people make, it
Indeed.
seems. But But yeah,
and we don't judge anyone.
It was a bit of a flying visit. It was like one night, go out, have some food and drinks, and then I had 9 interviews back to back. So it's a bit like MWC, except instead of like wandering around, they all come in the room with you, and then I got taken around to see a few things, and then it was like go and get the flight back. So
I did one of them a few years ago, and I attempted a really sort of ad hoc filming it on my phone thing with a selfie stick. I think it went all right. But yeah, that's a good tour. Nice one. Well, I look forward to hearing more about that in a bit, because that'll be our middle segment. And our final segment, I kept up on the news enough to know that we've banned social media for kids now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to rant about that.
Yeah.
But for our main segment, so actually, before we get into it, Geoff, how long you... So you live in Texas, is that right?
That's right, Dallas.
Yeah. Oh, Pierre, chuck over that tin of yours that you're taking home with you. He brought us some beers, including this from Dallas, yeah?
Local brewery.
Down the road. It's called the Original Mosaic IPA India Pale Ale. A sort of needless repetition there, but we'll let him off. The Original Mosaic Community Beer Company. It's a community. They like to get the community pissed.
Yeah, community beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this because everybody can have a sip and still get pissed?
Exactly.
One can.
Because it might not come through on the camera, it's 8.6%.
It's a healthy 8.6%.
I think the only reason we're considering drinking one is at least as a normal sized tin. Last time you brought one, it was about 12%, and it was like half a litre as well.
Yeah, it was a Belgian kind of like semi-wine, just Belgian monk.
It was just a sort of game over.
That's when religion was fun.
Yeah, exactly. They're Trappists. They're Trappists not because they're religious, because they're too pissed to talk. Cool. And when did you get over from the States?
Landed yesterday morning.
All right.
So, yeah.
And have you been out and about in the UK since then?
No, yesterday. Yesterday I stayed up. I watched... so the England game was 30 minutes away from where we live.
If you want.
Yeah.
Oh, and we met up with Sean and Ray, Telecom TV. I know.
Hi, guys.
They go back a long way with you guys.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. They say hi.
Did you watch the footy with them, or you met them just for a cheeky drink?
Yeah, we watched the second half, and it was we missed the first half. The second half, we weren't sure we were watching the real game. It was quite positive.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's nice to watch England like that rather than.
And the game happened 30 minutes from where you live.
Yeah, that's right.
Ironically.
Yeah. But I would have struggled to afford to go there.
Yeah, tell us about that. What's it cost to get into the game there?
So if you're in the Eagles' Nest, the worst seats, it's $1,000.
Just to go and see that England game live.
Yeah.
How big's that stadium?
I think that's 70,000. That's not the main stadium, by the way.
Right.
The main stadium is the
stadium.
Yeah, that's just their backup stadium.
Is that where they play college football or something?
Yeah,
It's not where the Cowboys play.
The Cowboys play at the American Airlines Stadium. That's the important stadium. So
why didn't we get that? Fucking hell.
It's only football. It's only soccer.
insulted.
Yeah,
it's only soccer. That's the reason, Scott. Yeah. Trump wouldn't allow it. He said we're not having that sport.
Okay, so to get
game.
France played on the one that's going to be the final, and the pitch was the field. It was horrible.
Oh, but you don't care about France anymore, anyway.
No, I do still. But it's concerning. Like the pitch was absolutely crap. Unless it gets better in a month, but I don't know. For the final, it's kind of a bit.
That's not ideal.
No.
And so it's cost a starting price is $1,000.
So if you're up at
stadium.
the Crow's Nest, $1,000. If you go into an average seat, about $2,000.
Right.
And then, I mean, you then can raise you up to 3,000, 6,000.
And I saw some of the prices of food there, like a beer's $15. Any half decent bite to eat, you're getting to $25.
But $15 sounds quite low when you've paid $1,000 to get in there. You almost
that's the point, isn't it?
$200.
You've already got your target audience. Yeah.
I saw a pint for $15.
Yeah.
And that's before tip.
Yeah. Give you a tip. Stop fucking ripping everyone off.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're not going to be going over there then?
No. To be honest, I wouldn't pay if it was a tenth that price
anyway.
You're
not a massive football fan anyway, are you?
No,
really?
and especially not international football, because it's normally boring, which is why I'm pleased to share everyone's pleasant surprise that game was quite exciting. I normally find it completely dire because the players aren't familiar with each other. They're not like bothered.
Yeah, well, that might be as good as it gets, you realise.
Yeah, the problem is now that the country believes.
Yeah, exactly. The next one will be 0-0.
Yeah.
Like Ghana.
Who are they playing? Yeah, Ghana. Somebody that doesn't know which
Ghana,
way to look.
Paraguay, is it?
Panama.
Panama.
Yeah. Even worse.
It's coming home.
Yeah. Well,
I'll tell you one other plus. I was watching the ITV coverage, and so we got the other thing that's really annoying while we're doing this tangent is it's so commercialised. We got all the pricing that you just detailed, and then we've got these things called hydration breaks, which has never happened before in the history of football. And you know,
it was 22 degrees as well in Dallas when they were having these hydration.
with a roof on it. It's air conditioned. And obviously. Players, you know, South Americans have been able to play for hundreds of years in Brazil without hydration breaks. It turns out they're quite fit, these players. And it's obviously just an excuse for Americans to just chuck a couple of minutes of advertising on the telly.
Yeah, but one thing, so I've lived there for a long time now. One thing I didn't realise is I always thought that football sports were sacrosanct, like the rules. So the rules of a sport you can't change, and then you can put a TV camera and watch it. That's not how the US works. They adjust the rules of the game. In basketball, they review the rules to see if there's a better engagement you can get that works better for the TV.
Okay.
And they'll adjust the actual rules,
Just little tweaks.
Little tweaks.
But this hasn't gone down well at all, apparently. There's been a massive backlash against it. So. But you can hear the fans booing as soon as the hydration break starts.
At least ITV, they stay on the pitch, right? They don't cut to commercials. ITV.
They didn't cut to commercials.
Any other channels, they just
In the US, it's seamless. I mean, the way they integrate advertising into all sports.
I mean, there's certain sports that are almost designed for it, like American football, which is very stop-start. I presume baseball too. But they probably find ways of squeezing it into basketball, which is a more fluid, non-stop game, isn't it?
Yeah.
So there we are. But hurrah for England. And hurrah for France. They did well, didn't they?
Yeah. Second half they did, not the first half.
Mbappe's like a record goal scorer now.
For France,
Yeah. Cool.
Ronaldo didn't do so well.
No.
Now the old
and Messi got a hat-trick, didn't he? Bless him.
He did.
He's fucking 38.
The goalkeeper, Zidane's son, was awful, I just have to say.
Is that Zidane's son?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
He was terrible.
Yeah.
They released like more highlights of his career.
Don't tell Zidane that. I'll run into you with his head. You know.
No, there's a meme now of him because he was at the game. There's a meme of him just going like, just looking disgusted, like
at his own son.
Yeah.
I blame his muzzle.
He looks like Palpatine in Star Wars. Is like, what is this?
Okay, all right. That's enough opening bollocks, I think. So, Geoff, I mean, it's so good to have you back. It's been far too long. How long ago? It must have been like...
I think that was probably 4 years ago.
Right.
It wasn't this office even, so it wasn't...
No, it was in this room, but it was blue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I stand corrected.
Oh, right, okay.
That would have been like early 2023.
Yeah, it could have been one of the first ones we did in this office then. But we always, whenever we bump into like events and stuff, we always have a great chat, and you're very knowledgeable about the whole business. Geoff's a great follow on LinkedIn for anyone who's listening. Not quite as prolific as Sebastian Barros, but very few people are. He writes a thing a day on LinkedIn, that bloke. I've never met him, but he is prolific on LinkedIn. And so
I think he's working for Joe Madden now.
Yeah, I saw that announcement. Yeah, what's Joe Madden's gig?
Mobile experts, but he's basically about semiconductor technology in the RAN. That's kind of the sort of stuff that I've gone into.
Right.
Rabbit hole on, really. But
yeah,
that's Joe's thing.
I first met Joe when I hosted a panel for Mavenir that he was.
Yeah,
on,
but he's a proper like electrical engineer. He's not like me. He's
not winging it like
he's
you.
not winging it.
So we could talk about anything, but it's totally up to you, Geoff. But I thought you might want to start, and maybe this isn't a coincidence, but we got a press release from Rakuten Symphony, and it is headlined "Telecom industry's growth crisis is a business model failure, not a technology gap," says new Rakuten Symphony report. So shall I start by asking you to elaborate on that?
Yeah, and a little bit of background that I'm sure listeners are familiar with Rakuten, but they might not be as familiar with what Rakuten is as a total business.
Yeah.
They're a successful online technology player, a bit more. They're more like Amazon than they are.
They're often described as the Amazon of Japan.
Yes,
actually.
Yeah.
And they do media as well, don't they?
Yeah, they pretty much, they've got, I mean, and a lot of TVs here have the Rakuten TV,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
they have
Most
70,
smart TVs have it, yeah.
70 different businesses, and they're all the same. They go in to a business, they digitalise that business, they reinvent it to the modern channels, and
So
then...
can I just ask, because we know them obviously because of the telecom stuff, which is only a few years old, but when did they actually get started with all the e-commerce stuff?
1997.
Okay, so it's really
It's literally at the same time as Amazon. Same focus,
really
it was e-commerce, retail. They embedded themselves into the local merchants. And then when you really get into that side of the business models, it's each country works differently. They're a massive supporter of small business in Japan.
Yeah.
So it's almost a blend between Shopify and Amazon. Whereas Amazon, some of the critique of Amazon is that if they see a good idea, they'll reproduce it, they'll nick it.
And undercut people, yeah.
Rakuten will never, do something like that.
Right.
It's about amplification of the local shop.
Yeah.
And now, of course, every single shop is on Rakuten. But then they realised that we know how to do that. We can then start diversifying into any other business space. So they now have the biggest online bank. They have the same with credit card, payment service. They have a travel service. And almost the sense of, like, they had an MVNO in telecom, but it just wasn't, it's not the same.
When did the MVNO start?
2014.
Right. It's about sort of 4 or 5 years before they got into it. Yeah.
And if you're a technology company, it's a bit like being on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
And you always feel like that telecom can do this so much better if you modernise your approach if you run it like any other digital business. So that's really what happened then when the opportunity was to in 2018 to become the fourth operator to disrupt the market, basically. And one of this is almost, we're unusual, it's a mission. The founder, Miki Mekitani, he feels that communication and connectivity should just be affordable for everybody. It wasn't in Japan. And the effect of Rakuten entering it, the average bill has gone down from 8,000 plus, which was one of the yen a month.
What is that in dollars, in real money? Is that hard to say?
How dare you, sir?
Well,
that's 40 quid.
40 quid, okay. So it's sort of US levels kind of ARPU in a way.
Yeah, it's not quite. No, it is actually.
It's an expensive market in the US compared to Europe, for instance.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It was, Tokyo was
just
about the most expensive city.
Right.
It's gone down to under 3,000.
Okay. That's a big difference.
Yeah, it's a big difference. It's a big difference.
I bet the other telcos love him then.
Yeah, so then it's when a company like this arrives in a market, and they increasingly are doing it, not necessarily because they build a network, but because they MVNO and the whole business proposition is becoming easier, then it absolutely changes the status quo. And the traditional industry, the whole purpose of this report that you were referring to, Scott, is that we spend a lot of energy speaking about technology, but in reality, we don't have a technology problem, we have a business problem. And we need to spend more time about what really do we want to do from a business, and what makes sense, and what are the alternatives.
And this feels like, talking about LinkedIn, it feels like one of those perennial telecoms discussion, isn't it? Whenever we'll get a sort of industry commentator on, we'll be talking about if not broken, then the challenged telecoms business model, the impossibility of increasing ARPU or getting any more revenue by telcos. The concept of digital transformation and so on has been happening forever. I think I saw one thing on LinkedIn recently saying that the whole telco to techco thing is dead. That was an idea for a little while.
Isn't everybody trying to be a techco?
Yeah, well indeed. So that's what I'm sort of leading up to. And this is not in any way be sceptical about the premise of your thing, but I'm asking you whether you see it as I do, as a sort of extension of this conversation that seems to be going on for a decade or two in telecoms.
Yeah, I think the strange observation that we make is that we keep speaking about this, but if you just go back to basics, what are telcos selling to customers? That hasn't changed at all for 30 years. You get a plan, you have a certain amount of volume in that plan, and you buy connectivity.
Yeah.
And you are one of many people that you can buy that connectivity from.
But the stuff that they used to make lots of money from has become rapidly commoditized.
Yeah.
And they don't make money from it anymore.
Yeah.
So it's the same basic premise, but it'd be like, I don't know, if your job was selling fast food, the cost of a Big Mac going down by 90% or something like that.
But wasn't one of the, like, getting back to the sort of ARPU impact that Rakuten's had in the market, if you keep the business model as it is, and we're just talking about what Scott's saying, that it is just a connectivity thing and you charge for gigabytes and it's unlimited, and Mickey Tarney's gone, everybody's paying $40, $50, wasn't the idea partly that you can come in with a lot of the technologies they were talking about at the time, and you had Tarek Amin there, I think, coming in as the sort of CTO initially and doing all these, introducing internet technologies, I guess you could say, in the cloud, into trying to do that in a way that hadn't really happened in the wider industry, and promising a degree of automation that we hadn't seen in the wider industry. And then all of a sudden you can operate on that basis and have a very profitable business there and grow your subscriber base and take business away from other telcos. Wasn't that kind of part of the original pitch?
So I would describe that as having the ultimate good hygiene as a modern technology provider of a connectivity service. You should automate everything. You should try and harmonize everything so you don't have unique suppliers for this box here and this box here, because you don't need spare parts then different, So you try and increase your efficiency like crazy. But that wasn't really why Rakuten joined. Rakuten joined because it knew that if then it could actually put telecom in as a first-class citizen into all the other online services it does, economically it changes the outcomes of the customers. So what we've tried to highlight, every quarter Rakuten does its financial reporting, and it's completely transparent about the economics of what it offers. But you start to get loyalty effects as customers start to not only buy connectivity, but they buy other services. They do shopping, and the synergy with that. Churn, if you use 4 services from Rakuten, churn is 100th what it is if you use one service. So,
and lots of other operators have tried that. They haven't had they've been coming at it, they've been an operator first and they've tried to diversify. Famously, we had EE try something a few years ago, and FT wrote it up as they've started selling fridges.
Kettles.
Yeah, kettles and fridges.
Well, I think a better one than that was, I think Rakuten's in a bit of a unique position.
Yes, well, that's kind of what I was alluding to.
The one that always occurs to me that I think is a massive failure, bigger than that, because I think there was more investment in it and a lot more talk about it, was Orange going into banking.
Right.
And they bought a bank. They bought a bank in France, and they made a big thing about, we can provide like financial services as well as do the telecom stuff. And we have this, that back in the days when people are coming into, my bank almost doesn't have any branches anymore, but they've obviously got their retail footprint, so they could take advantage of that. And
they closed the hitch in Lloyd's.
It was a massive disaster for Orange. Whereas, the EE thing, I know what you mean. The kind of
but the reason I was flagging it up is I've obviously got no reason to doubt anything Geoff's just said, but as you just said, Ian, Rakuten's in a kind of unique position because it's a digital giant getting into telecoms as opposed to a telco trying to get into
like Amazon
other
becoming
digital
a telco,
stuff. Yeah, exactly. Which they flirted with. They flirted with the devices and they were shit. That was when I was a smartphone analyst.
Yeah.
And straight away I saw this device and it cost a premium amount. And it was a forked version of Android that you couldn't do most of the stuff on. It's like, who the fuck is going to buy that?
If Amazon said to me, because I'm an Amazon subscriber, as I suspect loads of people are in the UK, and they went to me for your £90 a year that you pay for all this TV content and free deliveries and all that other stuff that you get, Prime, you will bundle in a phone service as well.
For only another like another 50 quid a year, you'd
my loyalty to
seriously consider
EE
it.
might not turn out to be that strong after all. I hate to say it, EE.
Well,
Sorry.
so on both those points, what we're trying to do in this paper is show that saying that you're a connectivity provider and then saying you're doing banking is not what we're saying. What we're saying is you're a connectivity provider that is targeting customers. Customers have a wallet. Other people target those customers. Can we start focusing on those customers and understand how we can actually add more value by partnering with other people to change how those customers make decisions? That's why Rakuten is different, because it owns all the businesses. In the paper, we deep dive into the airlines industry.
Yeah.
They used to have this exact problem where they sold seats, and the seats, just people wanted the cheapest seat.
Yeah.
And they were going out of business. They actually started partnering with different people to affect those same end customers to have different buying decisions through the air miles. The result of that was air miles.
Okay.
But what you've ended up doing,
Which in turn leads to sort of loyalty and stickiness and that
so
sort
it leads to loyalty. But what becomes important is that let's take a real world example in the airline industry, maybe, because it's a bit easier to get concrete, and then we can play with some ideas in telecom. But let's say that you're a rental car, hire car company. It knows that tons of people turn up at an airport. They're most likely to want to rent a car. There's 6 different companies. They all want to be the people that give you that car. But when you
car
turn
rental's
up,
a fairly commoditized business, isn't it?
yeah, it's the same. It's very similar to connectivity. It's like if somebody doesn't take it, that car is earning zero money. It's like an empty seat on a plane or an empty hotel room.
Yeah.
So what do you do? So the car companies traditionally would blast broadcast media and things. Choose this. Choose Avis or choose Hertz. And everyone's doing the same thing. If you're part of the air miles thing, let's take American, which I am. I am included in Avis. So I get air miles. So for every $1 I spend with Avis, I get 1 loyalty point into my American Airlines that contributes to my status. Avis spends 1.5 cents, let's use that as a planning number, for that air mile. So for every every point they're giving me, they're spending 1.5 cents. But when I turn up at Heathrow now, I'm not looking at everybody. I look at Avis first. And unless Avis absolutely don't have a car that'll work at some crazy price, I'll do Avis.
Yeah.
Avis has just guaranteed me as a customer. So the whole
and summarise again what you get from that relationship as a consumer. The miles, you just get cheaper cars in future, or what?
No. So with those miles then, which are my airline miles,
right.
I then get more rewards points. My status will go up, which means that when I fly back, maybe I get upgraded to first class rather than economy.
You get a status with Avis too, get a car faster.
And then, so it becomes mutually rewarding, that
But
relationship.
is there an equivalent that you can sort of envisage in the telco world where maybe they do... I mean, a car company is an adjacency to an airline, I guess, because you get off a plane and then you want to go somewhere. I suppose people would start to think about Amazon maybe being an adjacency to a telco in terms of some of the digital content. But is that how you could sort of see it working, like partnerships with those companies in the same way? Or
And I'll give one thought experiment, but each company needs to come up with their own belief. That's why Rakuten doesn't say you should export our ecosystem approach at all. It's thinking this way. So let's say that you're a fibre provider and you're going into 20 million homes in the US. When I choose my fibre provider in Dallas, I have a choice of 3 or 4 different fibre providers. The choice is purely on who's going to give me the best offer when I choose that. And as you say, as long as I'm satisfied, I probably don't change.
Yeah.
because it's just harder work.
Yeah.
So once they have me, maybe I stay. But if someone comes with a great offer, I'll leave straight away, like Amazon or somebody like that. Every year, we renew our house insurance. How do we renew our house insurance? We know 5 companies that offer house insurance because they spend a huge amount of money making sure we know them. We phone each one up and we say, I pay this amount.
Yeah, you play them off against each other.
Play them off against each other. We'll find
car insurance people do that.
Compare websites.
Yeah.
That was what was supposed to happen with OpenRAN.
They are. Don't derail me.
Price comparison for RAN.
I gave him a cheeky look.
Actually, there was a price comparison thing that Tarek used to talk about almost, wasn't it? Like sort of catalogues of different...
Don't derail me. Don't derail me because I need to get through my example before I forget.
Sorry.
My bad.
It's instead of doing that, then one of those insurance companies partners with the fibre provider, and they say, you know what? We're spending $10 million on our advertising budget to try and make sure these people call us, but we're in a price war. What we want to do instead is give you $5 million, use that to subsidise you going from a basic fibre to a premium fibre, which AT&T are trying to upsell me on, saying you don't need 300 meg, you need a gig. And maybe you need our Wi-Fi mesh. Yeah. So the house insurance people spend $5 million. Then they're phoning me up and say, you know what? If you go with us, we're the same kind of price. You don't care, but you also get premium fibre coming in. And then suddenly, all you've done, which is all marketing is, all you're trying to do with marketing is make somebody go, these things aren't the same. I'm going to prefer this one as long as it works. And once you're in that thing, you've succeeded as a marketing person.
And you're slightly decommodifying it, i.e. it's not all just based on price comparison tables, which one's the cheapest.
Yeah, and
you're adding value in other areas.
It's got to be something that makes sense in that customer's mind.
Well, that's what I was going to say. From a consumer point of view, my only initial pushback to that is it can start to get a little bit complicated in the consumer's mind. And, suddenly you're pushing these sort of quite hybrid propositions at them, and you're asking them to sort of make some sort of calculations, or maybe just get suspicious, like, is it too good to be true? If he's suddenly saying, look, you can get all this extra, no worries, you might be a bit suspicious. That's my only thing. I'm thinking if I was a consumer and I was receiving a pitch along the lines of what you just described, it wouldn't be a completely frictionless experience for me. I'd have some objections. I'd have some queries and concerns.
So then it comes down to how well you execute, because whenever you introduce friction in how you position that, if you ever make it complicated, then what starts to happen is your take rate goes down.
Yeah, people just think can't be fucked.
Yeah. So it's about being good at deciding what your promise is and then being good at delivering that promise.
Yeah.
If you do something like that, though, you've changed the relationship with that customer overnight. Because now, the next time you renew, if somebody comes in with a fibre thing, I'm kind of a bit more, hang on a minute, it's not just a simple quid pro quo, comparison. Now I'm getting something like that's greater than 1 + 1. Because I'm getting the house insurance, I'm happy with it. I'm getting premium fibre, I'm happy with it. Chances are I stay longer. And what we're saying is that we know that model works because that's the model that we built. We didn't design it, we didn't create it, we just took it because we knew it worked. But that's when you start to move from satisfied to loyal. And the moment you move to loyal, then you stop measuring monthly ARPU and you start looking at lifetime value and cost of acquisition.
Yeah, so it'd be quite hard for a lot of operators to do what Rakuten's done, though, wouldn't it? In terms of having that, that kind of broad range of online services and having sort of come into telecom from the other direction, they're always going to have to sort of go out and find other companies to sort of work with rather than having it as part of their own business.
Yeah, but companies do this all the time in other spaces. In this conversation, if you can materially help that other company get more customers for less money, and help their business model while they are helping you get more money, then what you've just done is built another revenue stream that actually gets you a more satisfied customer.
Yeah.
What we care about in this conversation, this is a conversation we never have in our industry.
Right.
What we do is say the answer is network slicing. And there's got to be somebody that wants it. We don't know how to sell it. We don't know how to deliver it.
We've had a thing that we can do with this
it.
new standard now. Yeah.
Well, I think
build it and they will come type of thing.
It's true that there is a sort of obsession with technology and putting the technology sort of first, isn't there? I guess, and what it's going to be used for something. But
and what we're saying is that if nothing's changing in the world, then you can carry on doing what you're doing and carry on. It's never going to be a high-performing business. But what we know is that things aren't status quo in the world. So increasingly, it's getting easier for customers to get their service from somebody else. MVNOs, as you just said, if an Amazon Prime chose to do it, you've got SpaceX or Starlink saying, well, maybe we'll become a service provider.
Yeah.
The status quo, we don't believe, continues. A Rakuten enters your market.
Yeah.
Now, what's really happening is connectivity is disappearing into the application experience in a lot of those instances. Revolut, for example.
Yeah.
Revolut.
Octopus has gone in there in a big way. The energy company. You're not aware of them.
They're a utility company.
They're a utility. They're kind of known as a sort of energy provider, but they actually own broadband assets in the UK. And there's talk. I think it's the FT was doing the report on them going into the MVNO business as well. But
listen. So you brought up Revolut. Are these people just saying because Revolut's a bank, is it?
Bank, yeah.
Yeah, it's a transaction.
Yeah.
And so if its core business is facilitating digital money transactions, where does the connectivity part come in?
Well, so then they bundle the connectivity part into what they're doing. So you can then go to Revolut already. You can buy eSIM from Revolut. They become your provider. Then, if you're abroad and you're using Revolut, they'll zero charge you.
Yeah.
But they don't care. Connectivity to them is part of them being able to give excellent financial service to their customers. What they worry about is all their competitors in the financial services area and differentiating from them.
But is that where you see the market sort of go? I mean, there's that conversation about how many kind of networks do you need per country, and you want some level of infrastructure competition. But I think we've had this conversation with Neil McRae when he's been on the pod. It's like he never really saw there being like this merger that's happened with Vodafone and Three. He was sort of downplaying the impact because there's so many MVNOs in the UK that the competition level is incredibly high anyway. But could you see a future where, given some of the market forces that we see, that we do go down to like one or two networks in some of these markets, and we have companies like Revolut saying, I'm just going to kind of introduce connectivity as a kind of app into the application that I'm offering, and that's how it works. Because it doesn't sound very nice for the actual network builders in a way, does it? I don't know, maybe it could be if they're doing great wholesale deals, but
part of the short answer is painting those scenarios openly is exactly what we think we should be doing.
Yeah.
So what we do know is that eSIM technology is becoming easier and easier and more seamless to do. And we can see that because increasingly normal people who aren't technical, they don't do roaming with their operator.
Yeah, I know.
Or they do.
I thought that when I was in the Canaries. So EE charges me about £2.50 a day to roam.
Yeah.
Post Brexit and all that.
I don't get charged anything.
Who are you on?
EE.
You do?
No, I don't.
Oh, I know why it is.
I'm on an all-rounder deal that costs me £28 a month, and I don't pay anything.
I know what it is. It's because they only.
I pay 12. You pay 28.
12? That's pathetic. You should be ashamed of yourself. You're the reason this industry's in the crisis.
Yeah, I'm not doing my share. Sorry. Go ahead.
You can make all the videos you want. You're still killing the industry.
How much do you pay your energy provider? About 160 or something?
Yeah.
Well, there you are.
No energy, more calls.
It's good to talk.
What? Yeah. obviously not for you. What it is I remember this. They only implemented it for people who did new deals after 2018 or whatever, whenever they decide to start charging again. So you're probably on the same contract you've been on for ages, which is why you're not paying. The reason I did it, the reason I moved, is because I'm still saving money. Because I moved to a thing that I've spoken about lots on the pod before, where I'm on a half-decent contract that gets me about 130 gig a month, which I don't need a fraction of. And then I've got all the rest of the family on their sort of legacy SIM-only fuck-all contract, and I just gift them the data. It's about the only time my daughter ever gets in touch with me is to ask for more data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like a functioning relationship.
But so that's why. So I went into my eyes open. I knew when I got this new contract, I sort of did the back of the fag packet maths. I thought it's still worth it to pay for the roaming, despite all that. But yeah, that's why I pay and you don't. Anyway, and I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, over the time I'm away, that's about another 30 quid or something. And you'd think I, of all people, would bother to investigate the eSIM sort of roaming options. I just couldn't be bothered. Talk about stickiness. So fuck it, I'll pay them their 30 quid.
So if it's the same, you might as well stick with yours.
Yeah, well, I don't know what it... I'm admitting, and I'm ashamed of my utter lack of curiosity on the matter. I didn't even bother to look into it. I just accepted the surcharge and just got on with it.
They work for like obscure countries, yeah.
But I don't think that's because nobody's bothered about getting you as a customer yet. I think increasingly in the future, it's going to be easier and easier, and it already is, to embed connectivity into the app experience or into the device experience.
Yeah.
And when they start doing that, it will gain momentum where somebody will turn up that you use anyway, and they'll give you a proposition, and you'll go, "Why am I doing this over here? I do this."
We see tiny experiences of it, like with my Lloyd's account. As a little bonus, I get a Disney Plus subscription, and like O2 for decades has been doing its little sort of, you can get free tickets to cinema or whatever. So we've sort of skirted around this for a little while, but I think what you're describing, we haven't gone all in. We've just sort of scratched the surface of it, is what I feel.
Yeah, and then it's important to understand how those economic models work, so that when you do sign the deals with those companies, you do understand what you're giving them and what they should be giving you. It's not co-marketing. It's not the traditionally. You put two things together and you discount them, and big companies go, get these two things, you're going to pay 70% less, and there's no other material exchange underneath. But if you are locking in customers and you understand the lifetime value difference for the partners you're working with, then you start moving the marketing, acquisition and transaction monies between you differently. That's really... So in the background, the fascinating thing that people fall into, myself included, is the economics of airline miles. Because they've made those things out of nothing.
Yeah.
The car rental companies are buying those. Let's take a credit card company. That's the easiest one. They buy bulk, 10 billion of those. They buy them, say, at 1.5 cents. Now, immediately, they're not just any credit card. If they're aligned with American, I have a reason to get them rather than any other credit card. Then immediately that acquisition cost, they give me 60,000 miles for doing that maybe. That's peanuts to them versus the acquisition cost of actually getting me randomly through TV adverts saying, MasterCard is priceless. But then each time I decide to use a credit card, I have 3 credit cards. The moment they can put in my head, I'm like, if I use this one.
Yeah. So I used to have that with my bank account with Avios. And I got one criticism I've got of that. I actually did get something good out of it.
That's BA's thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it used to be tied to my credit card, but I don't think, or my bank account, but it isn't anymore. But one time, I think my biggest criticism of it is they didn't do enough to help me appreciate what I got. It's only one time when I got an email where it just said, if you don't use these, they're going to fucking disappear.
Yeah, I agree. I had the same issue.
And then suddenly, me and my wife went for a weekend in Venice. But I reckon if they'd done a better job,
Could have spent it on wine.
yeah, if they'd done a better job of
That's not
constantly
paid for that, is it?
yeah, those were all on Avios, and it was only because I suddenly saw them. I
It's
went,
so
love,
romantic.
I went, love, we better spend these. Yeah, that was how
Honey,
romantic I am.
they made me do this.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do this. They made me.
Weekend in Venice, lovely. Can't recommend it enough. Venice is just as good as they say it is.
Especially when it's free.
Especially when the flights are free. And we even, I mean, I had to use them up. We even went like business class on the way out or the way back or whatever. Obviously,
We had to use them up.
Well, we did, because it was that deadline.
It's like an empty seat between you, isn't it?
Yeah, which will be appreciated. Yeah, I mean, on those short haul flights, it's not much. But we got to go to the lounge and get shit faced on before we got on the plane in classic English tradition. But my point is, I reckon they could have done a better job. I always found it quite confusing. I found it hard to find my balance. Found it hard to work out what it is redeemable for, and I kind of discounted it. So I don't think it achieved what they wanted it to achieve. I ended up accumulating these things just by spending money on my credit card, and maybe 1 or 2 flights or whatever. But it was a very passive thing. I don't think it contributed to my sort of stickiness as a customer. And I think if they just communicated it more and just every now and then, obviously there's a fine line because you don't want to spam people, but if every now and then they go, look, Mr. Chainer, in case you didn't know, you can take the missus to Venice with all the stuff that you accumulated, then I might have placed more value on the Avios and then achieved those outcomes that you were describing.
I think the telcos need an equivalent of the kind of lounge that you can get and get pissed in. Before you use your phone.
Maybe they just need to send you guys a bottle of whiskey once a month.
You're about to make a long phone call. You're in a long haul phone call. You need to have a sort of little lounge that you can go and sit in and drink a bottle of whiskey before you get onto it or something. But
or maybe just partner with a pub chain.
Yeah.
So the whole narrative that we're putting in this paper, and we're trying to share as much data and facts, both from Rakuten, airline examples, everybody else. Choose the business you want to be in and then be really good at that business.
Is anyone doing it? Like, do you see any telcos like the sort of example
way you
gave of the insurance, the house insurance stuff?
We have conversations with telcos that are doing more of this, and the reason that then we help is because we understand the right way to set up those relationships, but also we actually have a lot of customer data that you need to actually be able to package and understand to be able to do those deals in a not non-clubbing way, non-like beating your head way.
Yeah.
And that's then we enable those customers to start understanding how to get better commercial contracting in those relationships. They are exception, not common. What we're saying is that what we want is everybody to be thinking this way, and it's completely self-serving because we want to have customers that are growing. And if we can then help them grow faster, there's more money to invest in the stuff that we have to help them grow even faster. If we are focusing, as the industry is at the moment, on efficiency, just taking cost out, you will always need to take more cost out. Because if we don't change anything, there are other companies that want those customers that are currently explicitly paying for connectivity, that then they realise those customers, those other companies will go, well, actually, I can include that as a cost of my business.
Yeah.
I'll wholesale it. And it's really the Amazon Prime world.
Do you think there's a lot more cost they can take out? Because there's obviously been a lot of headcount reductions in the last few years, even before all this sort of talk about AI, generative AI started. But I'm interested in looking at, like, Rakuten came in, obviously, getting into the network stuff a bit with this. We have a super lean model here. We can use, like you say, we can get rid of a lot of these extraneous components that maybe you shouldn't be including in there, make it all a lot more slimline. Operate with a team of whatever it is, 250 people instead of the thousands that you'd find at an NTT Docomo. When you look at the changes that have happened now, do you think they could still get a lot slimmer? Is there still quite a lot that could? Yeah.
So there's 2 axes on that. I think the one axis that having worked in organisations for 30 years now. Most big companies, I think you say this yourself, most big companies, you take 40% away and see if anything breaks.
Yeah.
Nothing tends to break, so you take another 40% away. And you keep taking out, and it's amazing how much you can take out.
Yeah.
And
That's something famously Musk did when he took over X.
Well, what then? The frightening side
he took
effect.
over Twitter, I think you'll find.
That's a good point, before he turned it into X.
The frightening thing you find if you've worked in that environment is that rather than the work getting harder, the work gets easier because there's less people in the way of making
less
progress.
busy work and
less busy work.
Yeah.
I mean, we're about to find that out with AI anyway, aren't we?
Well, so then, can you take more cost out? Oh, yeah. Because suddenly the paradigm shift you go through is people manually doing things to software doing it and people managing software.
Yeah.
AI then starts to allow machines to manage the software to manage the thing.
Yeah.
So then you still need people because somebody has to be accountable. But the amplification effect moves from a 1 to 10 to 1 to 100 to 1 to 1,000.
Yeah.
And
they can spend longer making sandwiches as well while the software sort of carries out the task.
Yeah, and the companies that will do this well aren't the ones that just buy AI. You've got to change how you do your business, your processes, your organisation. You have to design.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was quite famously a little while back. There was some MIT study or Harvard study or whatever that showed that a really high proportion of... This was a little while back, and I know AI is changing, evolving really rapidly, scarily rapidly. But the vast majority of AI implementations at the time were failing because they weren't doing what you described.
Yeah.
They weren't fine-tuning the AI. They were just sort of whacking it out there and expecting it to just howl its way through the business.
I don't think it's changed, to be honest. I think the reports of that are even worse now.
Right. No, I'm saying AI itself is evolving.
Because there's such a conversation about AI, you must use AI. Companies are sort of, I mean, we're quite close
compelled.
to this.
Yeah.
Companies are sort of, from the senior level, foisting stuff on you that you're expected to use. And it's like, well, to actually use it would be an inefficiency, really. It doesn't really suit the tools you're presenting me with, don't really suit what I'm trying to do. And
I suspect one of the reasons...
complaints about it leading to inefficiencies because
to get money back,
to use them.
Well, one of the reasons to do it could be to data harvest and get money back. But I reckon another reason is, as I was just saying, they found that a lot of these implementations were failing because the AI wasn't made bespoke to the business. It wasn't given the inputs, the unique inputs required to make it useful to the business. That could be another reason why CEOs start asking all their people to use AI, is to generate that pool of data that they're funneling into the AI to then make it understand the unique needs.
Well, maybe it's just inappropriate anyway. Maybe it's just
maybe it's just shit.
Maybe it's just something you don't really want to throw at that particular role. I find the job thing though, like you were talking about, you get rid of 40% and then maybe you get rid of another 40%. Quite fascinating because I've been monitoring jobs for ages, even before anybody else, it seems, started looking at like headcount reduction. And you look at the US telcos in particular. Like Verizon's gone down from, I think. These are internal employees, obviously, and it's less clear what's happening on the contractors front. But they've gone down from something like 150,000, I think, back in 2015, 2016 to kind of 90 last year. And you think, how can you get rid of that many people? And their revenues are still sort of, so you look
people
at that,
who were presumably considered necessary at one stage.
That revenue per employee figure, and it's gone up from like sort of 500,000, I think, to sort of 1.5 million over this period, revenues per employee. And yet you look at their costs, the margins, and they've not really improved. Like the operating cost base of Verizon is still really high.
With declining
it's
revenues.
up over that period. And I think they had an operating margin sort of 25%, I think, in 20... I looked at this recently, 2015. I think last year it's 21%. And you're thinking... I mean, now, I think one problem obviously is staff costs are only, 20%, let's say, of the average big telco. So you take out a tenth of the workforce for a company like Verizon, that's like 1.3% of revenues or something. So you can only realise so much of a gain by taking those people out anyway. But there's a part of me that's thinking, if you've taken so many people out, I'd have expected to see, feeding through more than it has done.
And there are short-term cost things as well for taking those people out.
Yeah, and I don't know how much they're relying on external contractors when they do this more, because that's probably a factor, and they're paying severance payments. There's wage inflation. I know there's all these other things going on, but the reduction across this sort of 20 telcos that I look at quite regularly is it's massive. It's hundreds of thousands over the last sort of 12 years.
I mean, one way to frame the AI conversation in terms of change is that it's almost AI is telecomming every single industry. And what do I mean by that? Suddenly AI is an answer to these companies' businesses, every single business on the planet. What you find is that technology is never an answer. It's an enabler for you to do your business either in a new way or in a faster way or in a better way. But the moment AI becomes an answer, I think we're seeing this now, AI always has a cost. So suddenly on every single balance sheet of every single company, internet companies included, there's a token budget line.
Yeah, which is now higher than hiring people.
Yes.
So that's the other problem with it.
And then people look around and go, well, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
What are we getting for that?
Yeah.
And you can't actually see the outcomes of that. Then you realise that you haven't actually instrumented your business to be enabled by AI. You bought AI in the hope that something happens, and hope's never a strategy.
You get some hilarious perverse incentives set up. I heard about one big business, it might even be in Amazon, that set up incentives to use AI, whether it was measuring how many tokens people used or whether. And so people just gamed it.
Yeah.
And they just started setting up sort of looped, pointless tasks just to use up this allocation so that they could hit their fucking quota and get their bonus and all that sort of thing. So you've always got to have a look at the incentives.
And that's the organisational thing of like, make sure you use AI in your job because you know,
so you just do it gratuitously.
So people are doing it, and it's like, well, this is just eating into my day. I want to be doing other things. I don't want to be using AI to do something.
Or you just set up a gratuitous function where you do something and you go, AI, how was that? And it goes, great. And there we are. I've just used some fucking AI.
Yeah.
Happy now.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So the secret here is to actually decide what you're trying to achieve. And then the preparation work is nothing to do with AI. It's making sure you have access to the information required to achieve that outcome, and then to make the cost as low as possible to do that.
And work out what functions, like, it's particularly hard for us as writers to see how our lives could be made better by AI. Because obviously if we started relying on AI for the writing itself, then we're very much making ourselves redundant. And hopefully our audience would notice the difference between AI generated or augmented stuff and our own stuff that just came out of our head. But there are presumably tons and tons of job functions, and we're hearing about them all the time, especially some quite repetitive or data heavy stuff like paralegals or other admin stuff or certain types of research. Not all research. I wonder whether some researchers are getting a bit lazy there. So I think that's the point I was getting to, is you've got to not start with the AI, as you say, not be technology first, but think, what is the pain point? What is the thing that I'm doing now where I feel that it could be semi-automated, or I feel it could be augmented by having this, having these billions of GPUs that are sitting around in data centers put their computing heft into the task.
Or maybe in operator networks where they could sell their own AI tokens. What do you think of that, Geoff?
Which is a great segue, because I was going to say we're going to need to move on soon. But I was asking Geoff before we started recording how, what else, because Geoff's a great thinker and communicator on all sorts of things to do with telecoms, and I was asking about any other stuff we've been thinking about, and it just so happens Ian's segue was just that. There's something that's relatively novel. I think it first started coming up in Chinese operators, of tokens as something that telcos charge for the transmission of.
No, that's not what...
Is that not what it is?
I don't...
Go on then.
I think that's...
Elaborate. No, I'm back from holiday.
I think this whole idea of... I think John Saw's may be guilty of causing confusion here, T-Mobile CTO, by using the expression kinetic tokens to kind of suggest that there's some... that when you're actually sending, he's almost implying by using the expression kinetic that there's some value in sending a token over the network, and that the properties of it will be different from ordinary internet traffic. And that's not the case at all. Once it's going over the network, it's still...
So what is that? I've probably missed the point.
It still has latency characteristics. It's not... it's still internet traffic, Neil McRae would say.
Yeah, which is I'd say. So I think I might have missed the point.
So I asked Rakuten this at the... Okay. And he said, I get where you're coming from. I think what he's getting at is the idea that you'd need, edge network facilities. Like telcos need to take a role in hosting some of these applications, mate. It's the old edge computing story, like
which has been turbocharged
to the
by
point
NVIDIA,
where they're being consumed.
Yeah.
And I think what the Chinese telcos are doing, I don't think they're not doing anything where they're selling tokens as a kind of connectivity thing. They're actually selling tokens, which is so this is Mavenir is trying to get into them. There's a story out this week. Mavenir, company that is in the sort of telco software space, quite known for doing core network stuff in particular, but they're and some BSS OSS stuff. They're presenting this idea that telcos should kind of, I'm not saying I necessarily agree or disagree, but they kind of should reinvent themselves. I mean,
the audience might be able to tell from his tone.
But this gets to your point of them trying to find a solution to some of the business model challenges, and I mean, maybe this sounds a lot more far-fetched to people than what you were talking about, Geoff, but the idea that they themselves become large language model like they get involved in developing LLMs and they sell tokens for consumption. And the automatic question for any journalist interviewing Mavenir about this is like, how can they compete in that market, against the likes of Anthropic and OpenAI and the hyperscalers that do it? And Pardeep Kohli, who's a CEO who I spoke to, was saying, well, they don't, these. I mean, for a start, this is interesting that they're announcing it this week because we've obviously had some geopolitical stuff going on where Donald Trump's come along and said you can't get access to Anthropic stuff anymore. The best stuff they do. Mythos. Yeah, and that's caused quite a lot of concern, I think. And a lot of these open source models that are now circulating turn out to be quite good. They're not right there at the cutting edge, but they're. Pardeep Kohli's arguments, they're good enough for some of the things that a telco might want to do or offer. And, and it doesn't have to be a large language model that's solving some kind of nuclear science problem. It could be a translation service. And, then there's maybe interest in also hosting it, that this is the NVIDIA pitch, that if you turn your network into an AI grid, you're hosting those applications not just in these big hyperscaler facilities, but distributed across a country. Then you can reduce latency, and this is the whole AI RAN story,
and you become this. I mean, that AI grid, because we had a podcast in the past where we spoke about that, and then you become this sort of distributed compute resource thing. So when I got the press release through from Mavenir, it was AI tokens. I had your confusion. I was like, why does a connectivity provider have anything to do with tokens? But his whole thing was, their whole story is they shouldn't be connectivity providers just because if they do that, they're just going to have no revenue growth and they're not going to go anywhere. This is an option for them to sort of realise like a revenue growth opportunity, which is pretty much what NVIDIA's been saying, I think, with the whole AI and RAN story. Now, do you think we're going to hear about an NVIDIA investment?
There's a lot of scepticism, I know. So, but that's the.
Was that the token when we chatted briefly before we started recording? Was that your token angle that you were thinking?
Yeah, I don't understand why suddenly, or I'm very scared that suddenly Telecom, because everyone's speaking about tokens, Telecom thinks the answer is selling tokens.
Yeah.
Tokens are an exhaust fume of the creation of AI value. The only reason people are using tokens is because that's how you charge units that connect to some kind of cost structure.
Yeah, it's a measure of compute processing, basically.
Yeah. The people selling the tokens are the big model owners, AI and Anthropic and all that.
So none of this, our conversation here, has touched anything that I understand in the real world at all.
Right.
So I think we should reapply the kind of mental model that we were speaking about with the house insurance things that says, okay, what is it that we're actually doing? Who is it that we're doing it for? And why do we think they're going to do it with us versus somebody else? Where's the economic proof that this actually has something that I could even test in the real world? And if we take the thought experiment further, I can't see any of that, by the way. And the moment I hear people chanting tokens and kinetic tokens, and we don't have a clue. In 2007, just taking us back, Apple launched its App Store. We as an industry went, App Stores are the answer.
Yeah.
So then we started selling App Stores to operators. Now, we sold App Stores to try and make money from the vendor side. Nobody wanted to put an app in an operator App Store. Apple wasn't trying to commercially monetize an App Store.
And Nokia tried it from the handset point of view. They had a company called Ovi. where they tried to do apps from the handset
But
side.
Symphony did this as a kind of... They had that kind of model, didn't they?
But we never used any of the mechanics of this as a profit center to try and say we should be selling you enabling technology operators over here. What we said, this is just a good way to consume units of capability that you should be using and buying.
Yeah,
it's just a delivery mechanism, right? I think what we're again, we've got a technology kind of label that we think is hot, and we're trying to invent reasons why.
I mean, I think that to me, the whole AI tokens and why telcos are talking about it is exactly that. It's telcos seeing, this has an exciting new thing. It's inflated the share price of Nokia just by doing a deal with Nvidia. How can we shoehorn ourselves into that AI token story? And let's come out with some expressions like kinetic tokens to make it sound like there's some kind of value that we can introduce as telcos. That's me being my kind of usual skeptical self. But if I'm going to, what's the expression, Scott Steelman, like Pardeep Kohli's position maybe, then he's sort of saying, well, there aren't that many companies that you can go to, I guess, and get tokens from. I mean, we're being cut off from one. It's very geopolitical these days. Europe doesn't really have an option for, these foundational models mainly come from like the US and who knows what's going on in China.
That's just the very latest Anthropic one. You can still get legacy Claude.
Okay, sure, but who knows where it's going to go? Europe at the moment, trust is lost with the current US administration, to a large extent.
Fair enough.
So it could get worse, and there's already concern about being overly reliant on tech from other countries anyway. Maybe the idea of taking advantage of some of these open source things and doing that, if you've got the software expertise to do it, and if you join that to the fact that having an AI grid, and I don't know whether any of this is just nonsense to people, because when I asked telcos about this whole latency thing that got talked about a lot in the original days of edge computing, that there's a lot of skepticism about needing sort of hundreds of data centers across a country the UK size to do some of these things. But if they are right about that in the future, then I could sort of see the motivation to do it.
Yeah. So if we give the discussion the credit that it deserves, what we're saying is that we have telecom is interesting because it does have a very centralized and centralized supply chain, and the world is becoming geopolitically very, very complicated. Optionality is good, and who knows what's going to happen. Then the next question is, what does that really mean then in terms of who inside a sovereign nation is best positioned to provide that optionality? So if you look at the UK, and I'm not close enough to the UK, and where people are hosting their technology that they own, where are they doing it today?
Yeah.
They're not doing it with telcos, they're doing it with other companies that are actually providing service. I mean, I use a company called Hetzner that then I rent servers from to run certain applications. I would never do that with a telco. Now, to deliver that service, there's a lot of work from a business process, an operational process, a lot of other synergies there. Doesn't mean that telco can't do it, but why can we come down that next level in this conversation and say, what does that really look like versus the next best alternative at a sovereign state level then? Now, the reason I mentioned, I think before we started, Telus is doing this very well as a good example of a telco.
Right.
So it's really hard getting access to GPUs in Canada, supply side. Just not enough supply. Telus is buying GPUs for their own business. They decided we'll make these GPUs while we're doing that to consume it internally. We'll also make them available externally so that now Canadian companies have access to GPUs.
Yeah.
They've sold their inventory out to Canadian companies to the point where they have a shortage internally serving their own business model. Yeah. Now, is that a sovereign? Are people buying that because it's sovereign? Are people buying that because they just need GPUs and it's, the time to market? It's a great question, but that's a really good example of a telco. I heard somewhere it's a team of 6 people that have put together that service. really fast, really effectively, and now they're expanding it as quickly as they
Well,
can.
that sounds like the sort of thing that Maven is talking about to some extent.
It sounds to me like the classic cloud model of we have this amount of compute infrastructure, we don't use it at 100% capacity, let's monetize the spare capacity.
Well, let's go out to the customer side. Why is the customer considering using Telus? They just want GPUs.
Yeah.
So who can give them GPUs? They don't care if it's Telus, they don't care if it's whoever, it's just that there's a demand. I never used the word tokens in that. I've never used, I
don't know if you present it to, I mean, it's a bit like slicing, isn't it? I think maybe you don't present it to the customer as, do you want to buy some tokens from us? I mean, maybe some people are trying to do that with slicing. I don't know, but you do get a lot of people who say you don't sell a slice to them. You say you want a service with a certain agreement, a certain guarantee attached to it, and maybe tokens works the same way, but you don't actually go, do you want 100 tokens, mate?
Well, the way I would take the conversation up a level is that says if you start to host availability of open source models or whatever models on those GPUs, and the customers want to buy those LLMs, they will pay for it by tokens.
Yeah.
So the moment you turn it to an LLM as a service, companies aren't asking for that at the moment. They're selling out on the GPU level. Now, all of that is great, but my request to us as an industry is, can we come down that next... If we don't understand this, and we don't understand what you can actually do with those models, what problem we're solving. We don't understand what the other alternatives are, and we don't understand if anyone will pay it. And it's not a massive investment problem. It's more, it's understanding the market, the customer. And then if we think that's a really good idea, we should have been doing it yesterday and seeing if it worked. I think you listen to Telus people speak about this, and it's exactly what we should be doing. I just wish that we spoke less about kinetic tokens and things we don't understand.
Yeah, totally. I get it. Yeah. Well, I'm sure you'll hear more about the Maven stuff next week anyway if you're in Copenhagen, because they're there and they're going to be going on about it.
I'm going to be there. And there's half a chance I might even bump into Pardeep.
So you can hear it from him firsthand and not hear my kind of abridged version. He'll probably go,
he's like
completely sodded up my...
No, your fucking sidekick. He's talking out of his arse.
He clearly didn't understand what I said.
That wasn't what I was... Yeah, he might do. Oh, the story's been up now and they've not written to me yet and gone, you've completely fucked it up. So
you haven't had Emma going, et tu, Ian.
Yeah.
We should move on to other stuff now. I'm just wondering whether...
Can I?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm really hot as well, and just want to.
So we'll have a quick break, and then we'll move on to other stuff. Okay, we're back in the room, and we're going to pivot to Ericsson. And James has finally turned up. So I decided to start recording before you came in, James. It's all right. I'm just winding you up. Ericsson. So, shall we start by talking about your trip, and then we can talk about
if you want.
Per's big new job and that sort of thing. So some highlights, like not of just sort of Stockholm and that sort of thing, from an Ericsson point of view.
You don't want a tour guide of Gamla Stan or anything?
No.
Okay.
That sounds like it should be in the Middle East, doesn't it?
Well, it's quite a significant year for Ericsson, as it is for America.
Because they're moving up the road as well, aren't they? But they got a birthday, have they?
It's 250 years for American independence, but it's 150 years since Ericsson was founded.
Wow. Okay.
And
happy birthday, Ericsson.
I was taken by Peter past the address where Lars Magnus Ericsson founded his repair shop in 1876.
So I don't know if I went there, but
repairing telegraph indicators with a couple of lathes in his little shop. And
I don't know if it went there. It might have been
down.
I went to a place, it might have been Peter as well, sorry if I've forgotten Peter, but this was a few years ago when I went there.
Peter Olofsson?
Yeah, I mean, I know Peter Olofsson, I just can't, I'm getting a bit old and senile, I can't remember if it was specifically him who sort of held my hand around this place.
Yeah.
But yeah, some proper old telecom stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you get those addresses in London streets where there's a little disc, isn't there, saying...
Yeah.
The heritage desk.
Yeah, saying T.E. Lawrence used to live here or something. Yeah. There's nothing.
Lord Byron once got pissed here.
Exactly.
Sort of thing.
So there's nothing. It's just, you'd walk past it unless someone pointed it out to you and said that's the address. Because I think now it's like a bistro. It's like a fairly nondescrict bistro.
That was where he
that's
started.
That's where Lars Magnus Ericsson did his sort of. They were sort of repairing like telegraph indicators. So they were not like Nokia, who's apparently started making toilet roll, I think, and then pivoted into other things. But
was Nokia rubber?
Well, they might have done that, but the first thing they did was pulp.
Yeah, they were in the wood business.
They're in the wood business. They made toilet roll and things like that. So, as I say, quite a significant year because 150 years. So they've commissioned this book about Ericsson's history from this quite famous Swedish author, which I got presented with an edition of. But I thought it was a nice year to go over, given it's 150 years. And also they've significantly announced they're moving the headquarters. So here's the interesting thing about, because we're going to talk about the new boss. You know, I think this is geopolitically quite an interesting move, because Börje Ekholm, who's been there since 2017, is obviously a Swede, but I think he's kind of Americanized. He'd Americanized the company to an extent that I think was quite unpopular with some of the kind of company shareholders. You know, he was kind of a fleeting presence apparently.
Doesn't he live there?
He lives in Colorado. Yeah, I mean, he spends most of his time in Colorado. I mean, I think even before he became boss, he had like US citizenship and has like an American family. But I think there was this perception that they'd almost become too American in a way under Ekholm. And if you look at they're heavily reliant on the US for sales. So the year before he was CEO, 1/4 of Ericsson's revenues came from the US. Last year was 40%. And at a time when there's a lot of geopolitical tension, the dollar's quite weak. It's not good. It's not necessarily great for a European company. He'd moaned about Europe quite a lot. He'd sort of gone, it's a museum, you know, I'm going to move the headquarters to America if things don't change. And therefore I think it's quite interesting that they've gone with a guy who's a Swede as well, but doesn't seem to have that. I mean, we don't know yet, obviously, because he's not taken over, but he doesn't seem to have that US connection. And
this is at a time where Nokia's run by an American.
And literally like 2 weeks.
They did do rubber as well, by the way. I've just found them. Right. I found the Nokia bog roll.
Yeah, and that's
Nokia
what they started
bog roll from
doing.
the 60s, but then they also did rubber, and they made rubber boots like you know, Dunlop or whatever. Go on, sorry mate. I thought it was an important interruption.
But I thought it was interesting, the appointment coming as well, almost like a week or two after they'd said, we're going to stay in Stockholm. I mean, I don't think it was ever very realistic to have them moving to America, and having their, and like re-domiciling or anything. But it was something he'd said to, I think, Bloomberg in late 2024, you know, unless conditions improve in Europe, then maybe we should consider moving to America. I'm sure it'd delight Trump, because there's always been this concern, it seems, over there in some circles that they don't have their own big RAN vendor. Their market at the moment.
And don't forget how very forceful Trump has been through the use of tariffs, of trying to basically bully people into domiciling in the States, or at least investing heavily.
So, and you know, and I think like Ericsson is most of the market. I think now, if you look at the market share in the RAN, it's like, I think you look at sort of Deloro's figures, they're sort of plus 50% certainly, but maybe up to 70%. I think they were saying. So I think it's quite interesting that they've gone for a guy who's Swedish, based in Stockholm. This headquarters aren't moving, as ridiculous as that might have seemed. And he's come from within the company. So he did electrical engineering at that university that you're aware of, Geoff. Then went to Stanford for a bit, so had his exposure to America. But then joined Ericsson, and has been there since he was obviously in his sort of early mid 20s, and has worked his way up through the ranks. Massive contrast to Nokia, which was in a very different situation anyway, I think, when they last changed CEO. But they've gone outside the business, hired a guy from Intel who's American, done this deal with NVIDIA. I mean, the two companies look remarkably different, I think, at the moment, strategy.
It feels like
more so than for a long time.
More so than for a really long time.
Well, and Nokia's gone through, you know, even once it got over bog roll and Wellington boots, it's still gone through a hell of a lot of transformations. Yeah. You know, the Nokia I started covering was the handset giant. And then around the time I was covering them as an analyst was when they had decided to create 4 sort of mega silos in the company, which was handsets, SatNav, because they'd spent a shitload of money on a company called Navtech, Nokia Siemens, as it was then, which was the networks bit. And then the fourth bit, I can't remember what it was, just dicking about. Maybe that's bog roll. Anyway, but
I think if you compare the two of them, because they, as you said, they're very different, and Nokia's obviously in a lot more areas than Ericsson is, with its optical business and all the stuff it does in fixed. But if you compare the units that are the RAN part, the mobile networks bits, like the job the CEO needs to do at each company is massively different. You know, Nokia had lost market share since the sort of start of the 5G era, and had major setbacks in the US, where they generate most of their profits, it seems, around the RAN vendors. Which is really kind of, I mean, it's still trying to turn that mobile business around.
So that's one thing I wonder, whether they feel that they've always been playing catch up with Ericsson on the network side, and that's why I mentioned that stuff before. So there was Nokia Siemens, of which, you know, they only owned half or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they bought out Siemens from that joint venture at a time, you know, and this predates the time when politically Chinese vendors weren't allowed to be in the West. But I just wonder whether they've always felt that technologically and maybe commercially, they were always second fiddle to Ericsson, and they tried the odd risk. There was that risk that didn't work with those chips from Nokia. I just wonder whether there's a culture of they've always been playing catch up on the RAN side with Ericsson.
Well, I don't think they were perceived to be like way behind them in the 4G days. I think the Alcatel-Lucent, like Nokia merger that happened in 2016 kind of tripped them up quite a bit.
Yeah, but again, it makes me wonder why they did that, because they seem to think that would augment their RAN side as well.
I think the main motivation for that deal was to have a kind of fixed and core, an IP, an optical business.
Yeah,
really,
which obviously is what they bought.
Paid off. It's like that's the driver of growth in a way.
But you know, as well as I do, initially it was pitched as this bundled sort of solution where
but the bits that you were bringing together there was duplication on the mobile side, and trying to bring those two portfolios together, from as far as I gather, was difficult and challenging. I mean, that can often happen when you're trying to do that integration, and that's one of the reasons I think that they kind of slipped up, let's say, in the early days of 5G, and that's still hanging over them now. They've had these setbacks in the US. I mean, in a way, Nokia on the mobile side, let's say, is kind of where Ericsson was in a way when Ecom got introduced.
Yes.
You know, if you look at Boy Ecom coming in,
Vesberg had lost a bit of focus.
I thought it was quite interesting when I was chatting to Eric Rakuten, who's the CTO.
He's been there a while, Eric,
and I met him in Stockholm, and I kind of went, it looks like you sort of dropped the ball in 4G, and Nokia kind of, Huawei sort of came along and, you know, ran ahead of you. And he went, well, yeah, we've been really public about that, actually, and you know, we're not very proud of it. And I think
drop the ball R&D wise, like technology wise.
Yeah,
well, focus wise. There was a lot of diversification.
Yeah, Vesberg did all sorts of bits and bobs.
And so what Ecom had to sort of turn the company around, or effectively by returning it to what it had done very well before, and retreating from some of those like weird outposts that you know that Vesberg had gone into to do with TV and I think even cloud hardware and stuff.
Well, I was in the cloud the cloud business at the time, so I was there.
I forgot.
Oh yeah, and. It was complete back to basics when Ekholm came in. There was a celebration in Ericsson when Nokia decided to buy Alcatel-Lucent, because the feeling in Ericsson was that would delay them 2 to 4 years.
Yes,
as they messed with integration.
It's a massive job.
Yeah, and just communicating how you were going to, merge those portfolios.
Isn't it amazing how often M&A turns out to be not such a fucking great idea?
Well, in some ways it has been.
It has eventually. And then Nokia now, I mean, one of the reasons its share price has gone up so much isn't just because Jensen Huang chucked a few bucks at them, but because of the Infinera bit. It turns out to be in the right place at the right time for the AI bit.
I mean, it's good depending on which bit of Nokia you're in. If you go and talk to the RAN guys at Nokia, they're still sort of feeling like what's happened over the last few years. Because I mean, my personal view is that Tommy Wheater, who led that business, that mobile networks business, after Mark Ruan, I think, had gone, he kind of came in and he was the guy who, like, we've gone through this integration process. We had this issue with using FPGAs in 5G products. We need to sort of try and get over this. I think he did a very good job of like restoring things technologically, but it was almost too late. Those early 5G decisions that get taken, like they lost the deal with Verizon to Samsung.
And buying cycles and telecoms are pretty late.
Yeah, and then Personally, I don't think the AT&T move to have Ericsson as like the kind of single vendor platform was that much to do with any technology competitiveness problems at Nokia. I think it was more like we're going to go with the vendor that does most of our stuff because we want to have this single layer underneath other things. And that happened to be Ericsson was like 2/3 of the network, Nokia was 1/3, so it was always going to be Ericsson. I think that's more the driver of that. But the fact that those two things happened, your two biggest customers potentially, other than T-Mobile US, your two most important customers going, has just really tripped them up since then. And so Hotard's job is really to, on the mobile side, is trying to is trying to do almost what Ecom did, I think, in 2017 when he came in, but it's difficult because they're in so many other areas. Like you were saying, one of the ways Ecom did that was to let's get out of all these other activities and put all the money into mobile.
He was always talking about upping.
And they're a one-trick pony now. They're a great one-trick pony.
It's always hard though, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Ecom did that, and then there has been initiative to try and diversify Ericsson out of it.
Yeah.
And they failed.
Yeah.
They are a one. So the challenge.
Well, the big one was Vonage. That's his. I would say that's his. What if you look at the? You've sent me that story, Ellen, and never commented on it. The FT headline about the appointment, which I thought was a very, very, very strange headline. Again, a classic example. I'm sorry, Kieran. I don't know if he wrote that story, but that's an example of getting it quite badly wrong, I think.
Well,
they said that
Kieran's potential defence is at big papers they don't write their own headlines, do they?
Right. I mean, they'd made a big deal. So they made a big deal of the fact that Ecom was the guy who was there when all this stuff to do with bribery came out, the Iraq stuff. And I mean, my take on this, and I've written about it quite a lot, is that I think that was something that had happened well before that he inherited, and it was like, well, this is a bit of a nuisance, I've got to sort this out. Actually did a pretty good job of getting on top of it, I think. I mean, there was a fine of $1 billion with the DOJ, maybe it was more than that, it was a couple of fines, but I think they did a good job of getting over it. If I was going to be critical of him at all, it wouldn't be anything to do with that, it would be the Vonage takeover. I think that's the one area where he's sort of, it's sort of a blemish on what he did at Ericsson, because I think you look at what he did, the share price is up. I looked at it earlier today. It's like 115% in the last since he took over.
Yeah.
So it's not Nvidia. It's not on that scale, but in a RAN market that's been shrinking, that's not been in the,
that's the challenge.
That's the challenge. Yeah.
It's the RAN market. The RAN market isn't going to explode bigger.
Yeah.
So what do you do to be a growth company when you're a one-trick?
I mean, to get to Narvinger coming in, I think the main thing Narvinger needs, because this is such a different situation from Hotard coming into Nokia, when they've gone outside the company. We need an American boss. We need to show we're friendly to them. We need to show we're more American almost. There's a big deal with Nvidia. It's a very conservative appointment almost. It's like a Swedish guy. He's not going to spend as much time in America. He's talking more about trying to do business in India and Japan than
But he has a much softer Swedish accent than
There's that.
Less scope to take the piss out of his accent.
I think his number one job really is to sort of not fuck things up again. Defend this property that Ecom's built,
which is easier said than done.
Well, look what happened under. I mean, I don't want to be overly critical of Hans Vesper, because at the time it might have seemed a very sensible thing to be going into some of these other markets, and they might have seemed like real growth opportunities, and there might have been question marks about spending so much R&D on RAN technology, and so I don't want to be overly.
And hindsight's 2020.
But he. To have the CTO sitting there in Stockholm like last week or whenever I went there and said, we did kind of drop the ball on 4G, which is pretty much what... I mean, Eric Ekkerden, I don't think, was CTO when Vespo was there. So
he would have been right up there, though, wouldn't he?
It was the guy who went to T-Mobile. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But they did kind of drop the ball. And I think the main thing for Per Narvinger is to look after it. It's like when you're Roger Federer and you're number one in the world and you've won all the Grand Slam titles, the thing you need to do is not mess up and try and stay
Well,
there.
and as you say, I mean, the big black mark against Ekholm would presumably be the Vonage thing. And that's not just me saying that. They've written off about 2/3 of the acquisition. That's not a fucking endorsement of it, is it? And whether or not that eventually yields something, then great. But in the short and mid-term, it can be viewed as a bad bit of M&A. But that's under the previous guy. So as you say, it's just sort of keep... By the way, before I forget, the FT headline that we were talking about, I just shared it with Ian and Pierre because I was just like, what the fuck? The headline is Ericsson chief. So this is the headline announcing the move that Ekholm's stepping down, with some impressively sort of horn-rimmed glasses. They almost look like leopard skin, don't they?
Oh, they are leopard skinned. Yeah.
Oh, they are, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I was about to say. Well, that's a bit racy, isn't it? Leopard skin glasses. Anyway.
He's been wearing those for a few years.
Yeah.
I think he might even have those on when I did.
Okay, well, it just jumped out at me. You know, he's not the kind of guy you expect to be wearing leopard skin gear. But no, it shows how little I know about him. So the headline is Ericsson chief to step down after stabilising scandal hit group. And I'd just come back from holiday and I saw this. I was going through my emails. I was like, oh, fuck, what's happened now? And then...
Yeah, that's a bit.
Exactly. And then the strapline is Boyer Ekholm admitted possible payments by company to ISIS in 2022, and then improved. And I thought, oh, it's that thing. So scandal hit group.
It's a very
is a reference to something from 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, Kieran knows, he listens to this quite often. It's nothing personal, and he probably didn't write the headline. But that's where I consider that headline misleading, because scandals hit implied a more...
especially when there's a change like
newer
that
thing.
well.
Well, years ago anyway.
Yeah, it's like you'd had to leave because he'd just been found, getting up to no good.
Yeah.
Which, to behaviour that might better befit his leopard skin glasses.
From what I sense, and from sort of talking to people, I think the feeling about, if there's any criticism of Boyer Ekholm, it would be on the Vonage deal.
Yeah.
And also on the kind of Americanization, I guess, of the company.
Most 40% of its revenues.
Yeah, because I mean, if that's where the money's to be made and the profit margins are better, then it's a stupid thing, obviously, not to go after that market.
Indeed.
And I'm not saying they shouldn't.
They want to turn the business down.
But also, on the other hand, you don't want to be overly reliant on two or three very big companies,
especially as long as the country's run by nutters.
Well, there's geopolitics anyway, but also at a time when the dollar's quite weak. I mean, that's now starting to affect Ericsson's earnings, is the currency situation.
Right, yes. Adjusted for adjustments.
And so he's also got this, I mean, you mentioned this whole, the kind of supply chain geopolitics stuff and where you can buy components. I mean, I did talk to Per quite a lot in Stockholm about that.
Little knowing what was on the horizon.
I don't want to sort of like mess it up because it's quite complicated. But there are pressures to, PCBs, for instance, printed circuit boards, they've always got from China in the past. And he was talking about pressure now to not use printed circuit boards that come from China. But the problem is, can you get them from other parts of the world economically at a time when component prices are rising generally because of AI demand? So they have these. What I think one of his jobs is going to have to be, as I say, defending what Ekholm's rebuilt, but also just being a really effective manager at first, almost in a kind of an Alison Kirkby kind of way at BT, just making sure all the numbers add up and that maybe Tim Cook's a better comparison, someone who wasn't a brilliant innovator but did a really good job of working out how to do things at a low cost in the countries that you're allowed to operate in at the time. It's difficult now because of geopolitics to be able to do it in some of the places where they have done it.
The two new leaders of those companies, there's more uncertainty in this industry than there has been for 20 years. And if you're an American, it's an opportunity to really kind of do, Ericsson can't be a one-trick pony, but what do you do? Nokia has more tricks, but they have to execute. It could be very different. No one's really sure of geopolitics. No one's really sure of what should Nokia be in the future? What should Ericsson be in the future? But the fact they're diversifying and they do feel different at the moment is going to force the industry to make decisions on which paths they need to take.
Yeah.
So from a chessboard point of view, I think it's the most interesting time to be in the industry.
Yeah.
For those leaders, I think it's, as I say, if you're an American, it's a great opportunity. If you're the other side of the Atlantic, wow. There's so many questions geopolitically.
Yeah.
Europe's
business.
very, very exposed. And every now and then the EU will sort of make some noises about getting more autonomous and self-reliant, and then everyone goes, yeah, how are you going to fucking do that then?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think we probably haven't got time to go into it, but the other thing for him is the RAN market isn't, even though they are the best RAN company other than Huawei, which wasn't the case necessarily in 2016, 2017, and there were all sorts of issues to do with Open RAN. Is that going to overhaul things? It hasn't really happened in that way. There's other aspects to Open RAN I appreciate, but in terms of it providing kind of big challenges to Ericsson, it hasn't happened. Samsung's still quite a small force really on the world stage. But the RAN market isn't a great place to be in. It's like you look at the revenues.
That's right.
It's flat. It's gone down a lot since 2022. Now, I know Del Oro came out with some interesting forecasts about 6G a couple of days ago, saying over the first 6 years of 6G investment, they're expecting the amount that's spent on products to be 10 to 20% lower than over the equivalent period in 5G.
It's not surprising at all.
So that's the existential crisis.
That's the existential crisis
for a company
like
dependent
Ericsson.
on that 10-year cycle.
And again, I asked, I did ask. I asked him this before that forecast had come out, but there's obviously people saying we don't want to spend loads of money on hardware again. We've got enough capacity. We want to do software upgrades. That I think is a challenge for them as well. Is how a company that's so dependent on RAN revenues and hardware sales adapts. Does he take it into another? Does he do a Vonage type deal to take them into a completely different business area? Maybe he does do a Hans Vestberg and tries to take them down a road where they're doing something else. Maybe he tries to buy Sienna. I don't know, but maybe the other way around actually these days. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what their respective market caps are.
But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think
you wanted to have a rant.
Well, yeah, no.
You wanted to have a rant about Keir Starmer.
I'm aware that we're running out of time.
Do you regret voting for Keir Starmer?
Do I regret voting for him?
Yeah.
I didn't vote for him. But I didn't vote for anyone. I've hardly ever voted.
I'm just trying to.
I've hardly ever voted in my life.
I normally in the US, I normally say don't mention anything, but Scott voted for Donald.
Oh well, I've said on the pod that if I'd had a vote in the States in 2020, I would have voted for him. But then I've said subsequently I would have a lot of buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
Since then, I mean, I won't dwell on this tangent too much, but nearly all democratic decisions are just awful. I don't think you can hold anyone's vote against them because all they've decided is that this person's slightly less of a liability than the other person. And
what was it? Churchill said democracy is the worst system, but it's the best one we've got.
Slightly different. It's the worst system in the world except for all the others.
Yeah,
I think was the quote. I mean, again, that's a paraphrase, but I think that's the essence of it. Yeah, it is awful. And while I was away, I was doing a bit of binge watching of a couple of US series, which I really like. I'd seen them both before. One's called Deadwood, which is set in South Dakota in the late 1800s.
Ian McShane.
Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I can't recommend Deadwood enough. And another's called Boardwalk Empire, which is set in Atlantic City in the 20s. And in both cases, there's quite a big look at the sort of nascent politics. Almost the... who was that French bloke who wrote about America? Really, Tocqueville. Almost that Tocqueville sort of view of this emerging country and how the institutions and all that sort of thing are playing out. And in both of those, granted, they're very dramatised and they're deliberately sensational, but what they point towards is a very flawed democracy full of graft and corruption and violence and fuckery. And 'twas ever thus. It's not unique to the States. It's just that in the States we can view it because it was such a newer from-scratch experiment, from about, 1700 to now. It sort of grew from nothing, notwithstanding Native Americans, of course, to what it is now. So it's all like a compressed experiment. And there's always...
No, they lost out, the Native Americans.
They definitely didn't benefit from that one. And yes, and now we got today, in 2020, where you're choosing between this nutter Trump and then this what seemed to me to be a complete non-entity, Kamala Harris, and people are always just given these awful decisions. And the same goes for the UK. Who was the choice? Was it Starmer?
We've got loads of choices now. What are you on about? You've got
Sunak?
about 5 choices.
Well, now we have, yeah.
Yeah, and they're all wonderful, obviously.
Yes. Yeah, well, it's actually got, I suppose, if you're going to get into the mechanics of it, it's got interest in the UK because it's become so fragmented. But I still think I don't trust any of them to run the country.
No, and I think the weird, I mean, this is a bit of a weird politics tangent, but the weird situation now is you can have a government that has almost no majority. Well, it doesn't have a majority. It's got like a fairly small percentage of the vote, and it runs the country with a. I mean, that was the situation with Labour anyway. They had about a third of votes, and yet they got this huge majority in the House.
The weird quirk of the first past the post.
Yeah, which could happen now with Farage in the next few years.
But the problem is that it doesn't feel like in any country there's very good alternatives.
No.
So everyone just votes for the one that's not in power because it has to be better than what we know.
Well, all democratic decisions are just status quo or change. That's all they are.
Although
you can market it all you want.
We seem quite keen on voting for nutters in the UK at the moment, though. So seem quite keen on voting for nutters in the UK at the moment. You know, Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage.
Well, no one's voted for Rupert Lowe to do anything yet. But the next elections could be interesting, but it will come down to that status quo versus change. It's just that the change options are likely to be a bit more radical.
Yeah.
But you could find the electorate, unpopular though Labour is right now, you could find the electorate at the last minute just goes, shit, we're still going to stick with them in preference to these weirdos.
It'd be nice to think, though, that people are voting for a plan they understand rather than just voting for somebody else.
Yeah.
And you have no idea, and they're going to walk in and they're going to face the same reality, and you don't know what they're going to do.
But I don't think it's possible to plan. I think this is one of the biggest bits of gaslighting we're sold in the democratic process, is that whoever comes in is capable of making much difference. Not whether or not they've got it within themselves, but they're so constrained by so many things, the permanent civil service, markets, national debt, all that stuff, that all they can do is tinker around the edges and, in a perfect segue, try weird little token. Why are
we talking about Keir Starmer? Yeah.
Weird little token policies such as banning
not AI
16s.
Tokens.
No, not a token. Tokenistic. It's such as banning under 16s from social media, which is my last little self-indulgent bit I want to talk about before we wrap up. I'm pleased you appreciated that segue, Geoff. That's the kind of pro podcasters you're dealing with.
Yeah. It's seamless, is what we describe in the industry.
And by the way, Ian, report on this.
It's quite strong,
weapon strength beer.
But is it nice and strong?
It does taste nice, but it tastes strong.
I feel like I've drunk an 8% beer all of a sudden.
Yeah. You feel like things have changed.
You look a little bit more relaxed, actually, now as I'm looking at you. Looks like you might have injected yourself or something, actually.
I'm going to need to slap his face.
Oh, that's the heroin I took in the toilet.
I don't think that's the beer.
This is... Actually, I just noticed he went, and it's got a bit of heroin in it. No. So I noticed that news while I was finishing off my holiday and travelling back. So for people who don't know, it's not a law yet, but it's the government in the UK went through a consultation on whether or not they should have a national ban on access to social media for under 16s. And there's some other little bits and bobs that they want to ban or restrict as well. And then they announced this week that, they've decided they're going to go ahead with it, and they're going to push the law through Parliament. And if the Online Safety Act's anything to go by, and also Labour's massive majority, there's no chance of this not going through, so we can effectively consider it law. And I just wanted to point out the reasons I think it's a shit idea. And then obviously open it up. This isn't meant to be just a monologue. You would expect me to think it's a shit idea from a libertarian point of view, because I'm just not into the government poking its nose into hardly anything. I want the smallest government as possible and just stay out. And, as a parent of now young adult kids, who I will admit failed them many times over when it came to restricting phones.
Yeah, sure, but you still want child protection, don't you?
I do.
I mean, you don't think that...
Well, that's what I was just leading up to. I think it should be the role of the parent, while at the same time admitting
what about film censorship? Like even certificates, 15, 18 certificates on movies. Do you think even that's like...
No, I think that's fine. I've never had a problem with that. And if you could...
There's got to be some kind of...
If you could implement such a thing on the internet, I don't think I'd necessarily be hostile to that.
Well, I don't think it's very effective in movies anymore, to be honest with you, but it used to be in the days when we went to
now that
cinemas.
you're streaming on Netflix.
But I can understand the motivation for...
Okay, so let's start with that. Let's concede the point, and I'm happy to concede the point. Having conceded that I did a bad job of protecting my kids, especially my son, from the worst of the internet.
Yeah, look how he's turned out.
No, the nutter.
How often can you visit?
With his long hair and his...
long hair and his beard.
Is he going into politics?
Actually, he's got quite political. He went on a demo the other day. He went on a pro-Palestine demo. So there we are. That's you can guess from that what side of the political fence he is. Yes, the internet and social media is harmful to kids. There's absolutely no doubt about it. It seems to be especially harmful to early to mid-teen or younger girls because of the social element of it. Where girls bully each other tends to be more social, where boys bully each other tends to be more physical. And
apparently they set up alarms in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m. to check their likes on their posts.
Yeah, well, there's that as well. I mean, I think even I managed to not let my kids have phones in their rooms overnight. But we even do a thing with Izzy where I bought a little lockbox and we stick the phone in a lockbox that's got a fucking combination on it. That's the kind of stuff you have to do with kids because it's so addictive. If you just hid it somewhere...
Why are you censoring them? Can they just take care of themselves?
But this is my point, You're inadvertently conceding my point, which is that I'm doing it as a parent. Yeah. So I'll concede all these harms it does. I'm not going to push back on any of that. And obviously that's before you get into actual illegal stuff, which, as I kept saying during the Online Safety Act, is already illegal, so we don't need a new fucking law for it. But anyway, such as abuse and all that sort of thing. So yes, there are lots of dangers that need to be dealt with.
My pushback would be that you're a responsible adult, so...
Right.
Well, some people would say you're a responsible adult. I'm not sure I'd agree, but...
But you're inferring there are some people who aren't, and that's where the government needs to intervene.
Yeah.
So that, from my libertarian point of view, is a sort of thin end of the wedge argument.
Sure, but it affects other people. That's the problem. That's the reason we sign up to these systems, isn't it? In a democracy, we say, we want the government to sort of intervene and have some rules about what children are exposed to. Because if other nutters out there who just allow their kids to watch someone getting knifed to death on a snuff movie, and then God knows what that kid's going to be like when he's 18, 19, that affects me potentially when I'm walking down the road and he's behind me. That's why we sign up to those systems, surely.
So that's where I'll refer you back to my point about the thin end of the wedge argument. Ultimately, you have a sort of balance in society between safety and liberty.
Yeah.
And we could all be completely safe and completely unfree. And then the other extreme is the other end of that spectrum. And so what we're normally arguing about with these things is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Do we want to move the dial a bit more towards safety and away from liberty, or the other way around? And I feel, for me, and I admit this, my own personal preference is I'm a bit more pro-liberty biased. And so I guess by inference, not so safety biased. And for me, this is a move in the safety direction too far, because not just by itself, I think it should be down to parents. And I take your point that some parents are shit, but I push back on the idea that that things should become law because a minority of people need it applied to them. That's too broad a brush for me. But then the thin end of the wedge thing that really bothers me about it is, so now everyone needs to show some kind of digital ID in order to get onto websites to prove that they're over 16 or whatever. That feels like a thin end of the wedge towards blanket digital ID, where you need to show ID to do almost everything. And that in turn feels like a thin end of the wedge towards blanket ID full stop, which is something that Labour's been toying with for quite a while.
Yeah.
And again, you're like, what's the problem? And then you get into sort of what I find unconvincing arguments like, well, if you have done anything wrong, you've got nothing to be afraid of. But that's assuming a flawless police, a flawless government, a flawless judicial system. Anything that basically gives the state tons more powers of surveillance, I don't particularly like. So that's one argument, and I'll shut up in a sec. My other argument is that I don't think it's workable. And I think there's anecdotal evidence. Actually, before I finished the thin and the wedge one, I just remembered when I was going through my emails, I went through about 1,500 emails this morning before I came in here because I just got back from holiday. I saw a couple of news releases from Ofcom, which is now, basically the national censor, and they're charged with enforcing the Online Safety Act. And so one news release was keeping people who work in sports safe during the World Cup. Ofcom has today written to online platforms ahead of the World Cup to make sure they protect sports people and pundits from harm in line with their duties under the Online Safety Act. Now, the Online Safety Act was always sold as something to protect children. There's nothing in this about children. This is about people cussing footballers for missing penalties or slagging off commentators for disagreeing with them. So there's another thin end of the wedge, slippery slope type of thing. And then I saw another thing from Ofcom. These are all sent from our mate Harry Rippon, who's been on this pod, who was great, and you're welcome back on, Harry. And I always say this: anytime he thinks I'm talking shit, come on and say it for the record. Here's another one. Ofcom letter to UK online service providers regarding civil unrest in Belfast. So for people who haven't been following the UK current affairs, maybe that's you too, Geoff. There was some attack by a person of foreign ethnicity on an Irish person in Belfast, and that's led to loads of people kicking off about immigration and all that sort of thing. That's I was on holiday. So
inflamed by certain people's social media records.
There we are.
Obviously, including a certain tech billionaire, one might say.
Oh, yeah, I think Musk has poked his nose in. He loves to poke his nose into UK stuff.
Lovely chap though he is.
And he's going, Ofcom today's written...
Saviour of humanity.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
World's first trillionaire.
Yeah.
Friend of the pod?
He got 20 quid from me. Friend of the pod, Elon Musk, yeah. Ofcom has today written to online service providers operating in the UK about the increased risk of their platforms being used to stir up hatred, provoke violence, commit other offences under UK law in the context of recent civil unrest in Belfast. So again, my point is, if it's already illegal, so there's certain things that are already illegal under freedom of speech, such as incitement to violence, which I've always said, I can't just say, everyone go and find Geoff Hollingworth who lives at this address and chuck a brick through his house. That would be already illegal to do. So again, that's a sort of slippery slope. That's nothing to do with protecting children.
I agree with your sentiment on the Starmer banning social media for under 16-year-olds. I had a slightly different take on it. My take on it is I just think it's a bit weird to view a whole thing as really bad and we need to ban this.
And you've got how old, Alex?
I mean, my son's 16.
Right. So but you're close to having skin in that game.
I mean, look, you let kids go out the house, they go to school, they're going to get bullied. That's just life growing up. And social media, in a way, is like a digitalisation of that. Yeah, it turns out not everybody who's commenting online is very nice. But, hey, not everybody's very nice. They're just... I'm not saying it doesn't need policing at all and monitoring by parents, but I think it's just a bit odd for a government to come along and go, you can't use it at all. Yeah. And I think it's, for some kids, I actually think you could argue it's been incredibly beneficial, social media. And I actually have a personal example, which I'll throw in there, which was my son who's in the US at the moment doing tennis. One of his friends who's still in the UK, a guy called Felix Miska, who I think I mentioned on the pod before, he started doing... a social media channel for tennis when he was about 10 years old with his brother, and they were filming a lot of matches and where you're allowed to, and filming training sessions, and it's grown from that, where they've gone to sort of meeting ATP players and doing sort of little mini podcasts with them even, and it's now, I mean, this is a really successful tennis channel on YouTube. It's hundreds of thousands of followers. He's been on Sky Sports, Felix, and it's funded some of his own efforts to get onto the ATP
you hear about
tour.
People making money off Instagram and stuff all the time.
He's become a good cameraman in that time. He's become a good presenter. It's helped him with his tennis. He would never have been allowed to do that if you'd implemented something like this. And that's my one example that I can think of it being actually incredibly constructive thing for someone. So,
but what you're describing is that, I mean, there's a couple of comments that, first off, unfortunately, humans aren't very nice all the time.
Yeah.
And it's hard to police the non-nice stuff out.
Yeah.
And the moment you try and do that, you introduce a definition that sounds like it's an absolute definition, but what really is social media. So in this ban, they've defined certain things as social media, but they haven't defined other things like we were saying, online gaming and real-time chat. So are you going to end up in a world where the people that really just aren't very nice are just going to move into those places that are still legal?
Yep.
And so then you go, well, you can't do that either, you can't do that either. It's almost like what we have enabled in the modern world is the amplification of humans to influence other people. And unfortunately, it's not all good.
Yeah.
But because we put it on steroids, then that badness has a more effectiveness in the same way as the goodness has.
And also the digital domain is easier to centrally control. So all the stuff that happens in the non-digital domain that is also malevolent, that the government does fuck all about, still gets untouched by this. But they figure by putting pressure on a few platforms, they can... Yeah, and I've got some sympathy as, if I was a politician with their thinking on the matter. But it's a lot easier to control the digital domain than the analog domain, isn't it?
Yeah, I just think it's a sort of knee-jerk, reaction. And I think in that old cliche about, the closing the stable door after the horse has bolted. It's a bit. I mean, they're very, very slow with tech, regulators and governments. They sort of...
And then they overreact.
They get very excited at first, and then after a few years, like, maybe this isn't such a bad thing. I think it's really interesting this happens in the same week that Keir Starmer is going, why can't we use Anthropic's best AI? Which, by the way, I mean, if I'm going to be concerned about any aspect of technology at the moment, it's going to be AI so much more than... One of the reasons social media is worrying is because of AI, because you watch stuff nowadays and you can't be sure whether it's genuine or not. Yeah. You see some of these clips of Trump saying something, and there was even a footage of Nigel Farage beating someone up that went round on X quite extensively, and people were treating it as though it was real. It's like, no, this never happened. And yet Starmer seems to have not even... because he's so desperate to try and have something for the UK to maybe, we need to grow again, and maybe that could be AI, and he doesn't want to do anything that might threaten that sort of sense that the UK is open for business when it comes to AI. He's not interested in that side of things. So I just find this very incoherent. And
it's coherent. There's a couple of other sort of cherry-pick points of evidence I'll give against it, and then we'll probably have to wrap up if you two have got any other last things. There's evidence from Australia that's already implemented such a thing that says that it takes kids 2 seconds to find their way around it, be they VPNs. Yeah. And by the way, talking about the thin end of the wedge, so now there's talk, because you use VPNs to get around it, let's fucking ban VPNs as well. And VPNs have various pros and cons, but one pro is to do with data protection and privacy and that sort of thing.
Right. It's whack-a-mole, isn't it?
It's massively whack-a-mole, but it's whack-a-mole where the direction of travel is always towards a reduction of civil liberties.
Yeah.
At least that's my bias. That's the filter through which I view it. So there's lots of evidence from Australia that this doesn't even work. And then the last one I'll point out is, I think I saw this while I was away. There was a young girl who's considered the sort of totemic example of why this stuff needs to be done, who was called Molly Russell. And she was an early teen, and she committed suicide. And it's generally viewed that the reason she committed suicide is the amount of bullshit she had to deal with on social media.
Which is throwing in the bad example as opposed to all the good things where someone's managed to come out of their shell.
Well, quite. And we don't know. I haven't looked into enough to know what other adverse mental health events were happening to her to lead to that. But that's set up as a reason why this shit needs to be sorted out. Anyway, her dad, I don't know his name, Mr. Russell, let's call him, came out and went, he thinks this idea is bullshit.
Right.
So this person who's got skin in the game, and he's been actively campaigning, obviously, as you imagine you would, he's been actively campaigning for against all the harm that social media can do, obviously principally to his own daughter. And he thinks this is bullshit. He thinks it's throwing the baby out of the bathwater. He doesn't think it's effective, and all that sort of thing. So there's all sorts of reasons.
What does he think would be effective then?
I haven't looked into it that much, but I think something more subtle. In fact, one last thought I'll say.
That's what I think, though. I think you need to look at it in a... I'm not saying nothing...
It's too crude. I think he's saying it's too crude.
when I came in and I was critical of you for saying we don't need anything at all, and it's like, then you said it's about finding that where the needle lies. I'm not saying just allow kids to go on this and don't monitor them at all. There's got to be a cleverer way of doing it than just saying you can't use any of this stuff.
So I got one. I was chatting to me and my colleague Andrew got the train down just now, and I was chatting to him and I was saying I'm going to chat about this on the pod, and I said, is there a technological that beer's kicked in? Is there a technological example?
It is a complicated word. It's got a lot of syllables in there.
Now I see why Americans use such short
Now
words.
you can see why people in Texas speak slowly.
Such as, let's say, the UK state getting behind a contract handset manufacturer like HMD Global and going, manufacture a phone, a sort of hybrid dumb phone, smartphone, that's got very restricted, like hard baked into it, very restricted access to certain things. I remember looking into this for my kids when I was younger. I was like, why is the only choice between like a Nokia from 20 years ago and then a full-blown smartphone on which you can get everything? So could we get somewhere in the middle there? And you could even have a partnership to make it even more telecoms-y with operators, where the government could commission this phone, offer it as some kind of subsidy. That'd be a rare example of it spending money usefully. And then maybe even get a partnership with an operator that's got a special kind of filter at the operator level. So I would look for more subtle technological answers rather than these blanket bans.
Yeah, totally.
So you have to, the moment a government steps in somewhere, and naturally there's always a change in behaviour but there's always a cause and effect.
Yeah, and possibly unintended consequences.
Unintended consequences, the second order effects of that.
Yeah.
And you have to be really careful as a government going into that those second order effects are actually effective and not destructive. So the
net outcome is benign.
Yeah, and I think the challenge with governments is that they're moving slower than the speed of progress of technology.
Oh, they're always lagging, yeah.
They were before. Now they are exponentially slower. So if you look at, we need to worry about privacy. So the European Union leads the world and they do GDPR. The net result of GDPR is everyone just clicks on a banner to get rid of it. That's put friction in that system to an incredible degree. Do we think that our privacy is better protected now or not?
Yeah.
No, not at all.
Yeah, you end up just blanket accepting whatever bullshit is there because you're not going to click through and micromanage it, are you?
No, that's right. And you
it's like a EULA or something like that.
Well, I went to years ago.
It gives you the option, though.
Yeah, but years ago I went to an MIT thing about privacy that was I was chairing a discussion about what should we do, and there were lawyers in my working group, and I turned around and asked the lawyers, "Do you read the EULA before you sign it?" No, of course not. No, I need to get to the cat videos.
They're deliberately excessive.
Yeah. So if the lawyers who are trained not to do this are doing this because they need to get to the kryptonite, all you've done is put a fake irritation in the system. What worries me about Europe, this is going back a full circle, is that there's so much obsession with keeping everything safe that it alienates the ability, the AI world. Because to your point, Ian, if you think this is scary, we have no idea.
Yeah.
But trying to protect the world from AI is probably going to keep you in the caves.
Because it's still going to go ahead in the US and China.
Everywhere else is going as fast as they can. There will be unintended consequences. Will they be worse or better than the country that's the region that has said this is just, we need to be bad? So it's really hard to instrument this world that we're doing.
Yeah, it's back to my equilibrium about safety versus freedom. America a bit more freedom, Europe a bit more safety. Let's see how it plays out. But yeah, I agree with you if that's the point you're making, that Europe's a bit excessively pro-safety in that one.
Europe is trying to do the right thing, but the outcomes might be, as to your point, second-order effects or unintended consequences of doing that. And it might be really, really unfortunate.
Indeed.
Whereas America might just detonate a nuclear bomb accidentally that's controlled by an AI.
There's the pro-safety argument.
Yeah, but I can guarantee they won't do that in Texas.
Okay. I think that's a good point on which to end it. Thank you very much. I think I've survived your weapons-grade Mosaic IPA.
Did you enjoy
Makes me
it,
see
though?
the night is young. Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
I don't think... It's not thirst-quenching. I mean,
It makes you feel like you need one more,
It
doesn't it?
does. It makes you feel like you need a lager.
Our friend Richard Fogg would call it chewy,
Right.
which is how he describes your more sort of full-on.
It's like your $40 steak, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's very nice, and
It's like eating hops.
it doesn't necessarily taste like you're drinking 8.6%.
Cardboard juice.
Cool. Okay. So we're around for a little bit. The whole of this summer's going to be fragmented because of various people's summer holidays, but I think we've got about 4 in a row now.
We're going away again.
No, you are, and then Pierre is.
Oh.
Other people. You've forgotten your own summer holiday.
We're going out at the same time, I think.
So Geoff and James, if you fancy it, join us for a beer. And I hope you enjoyed that one. Make sure you join us for the next one.